Welcome to Cheltex Multimedia live stream for November 27, 2020, streaming live and directly to your device from Brisbane, Australia. Hey, it's Friday. Borders are reopening and holiday plans are being made. Well, we will look at the weather in a very minute, but this morning I'd like to get a big shout out to QML staff. Well, this morning I had to have my blood test and I went to the QML lab in the city. And of course, these blood tests need to be done before anyone has their breakfast. And of course, in that little cubicle, there were 7 people allowed in the waiting room, but there was, a queue outside as well. So 1 in and 1 out. And I must say that the staff there were very cool, calm, and dealing with this many people. And there was a trainee. And when my turn, after a long wait, my turn came, I went in and the trainee was asking the pathologist that, how do you manage on your own? She said, I just smile and just keep going. I don't look at the number of people out there. They keep coming, just, one at a time, and I just handle it the way. And I said, why didn't you have a few more people, when there's a time like this? Well, the thing was that, due to COVID, they have reduced staff and some of the collection centers are closed. But what took me back, I suppose, was the attitude of the main pathologist, Margaret, and the way and the manner in which, she didn't get overwhelmed by the number of people, everyone standing there and queuing up, just still going on with what she has to do, cool, calm, and making sure that all the forms are filled in properly and not rushing into things. So that's the way it is. So, hi, as I said, it's Friday again. Borders are reopening and holiday plans are being made. Well, to assist with the planning for this weekend, first let's take a look at the weather for this weekend with Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 29 degrees. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with 5% chance of shower. Light winds becoming easterly 15 to 25 km per hour in the middle of the day and then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger is high. Sun protection is recommended till 40 past 3 and UV index is predicted to reach 12, that is extreme. Over the weekend again, Brisbane area will be mostly sunny with no chances of shower. On Saturday, minimum will be 20 and maximum will be 30. Light winds becoming northeasterly 15 to 25 km per hour in the middle of the day and then becoming light in the evening. On Sunday, minimum will be 19 and maximum will be 31. Winds north to northwesterly 15 to 20 km per hour, tending north to northeasterly 25 to 35 km per hour during the day. Over the weekend, sun protection is recommended from around 20 past 7 till 40 past 3 and UV index is predicted to reach 12, that is extreme. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy a lovely weekend.
And thank you very much, Dilraj, for that weekend update. As we know that with the borders reopening and everything like that, people are starting to make plans. And of course, if you want to move around in the weekend, you need to know what's happening out in the weekend as well. Well, right now, before we go into the news, other news for today, first of all, let's take a very quick look at the headlines for this morning, courtesy of ABC.
You can also check us out online at news.abc.net.au and on iView. Here are today's top stories. The federal government will send repatriation flights to Europe next month to bring home some of the 36,000 Australians still stranded overseas. Qantas will run extra flights from Frankfurt and Paris before Christmas. There was disappointment for about 30 people who boarded a flight from San Francisco to Sydney overnight when it was cancelled at the last minute because of a mechanical fault. Victoria has recorded no coronavirus cases for a 28th consecutive day. This means the state has achieved the official benchmark for elimination of COVID-19. Under Victoria's original roadmap for reopening, 28 days without new cases was one of the conditions for moving to a COVID normal level of restrictions. The first major heat wave of the season will hit central and eastern Australia from today, bringing scorching conditions over the weekend. Temperatures of up to 46 degrees are expected in some parts of Queensland, while Western Sydney is forecast to hit 42. Authorities are warning of an increased fire danger. And there have been chaotic scenes in Argentina as tens of thousands of fans queued to pay their respects to the football legend Diego Maradona. Police had to remove his coffin from a room in the presidential palace where Madonna had been lying in state after hundreds of fans broke through barriers and ran through the building. The coffin has since been taken to a cemetery on the outskirts of Buenos Aires.
So there are the news headlines for this morning. Well, today is 27th of November. And on 27th of November 2015, at this time, where I was? I was in Delhi. So, Delhi, the beautiful, you can see the gateway there, and that's the way we go every year. So, 2015, I was in Delhi and on this very day, as right outside Rashtrapati Bhavan there, the Gateway of India in the background there as well. And of course, why I'm talking about Delhi today is that because we will be looking at Delhi and what's happening there right now. So this is in 2015 when I was there on this very day, on the 27th of November, and of course all the media lining up there on the side grounds as they always do, and the Rashtrapati Bhavan there as well. So lately, ladies and gentlemen, you would have all heard about what's happening in Delhi at this point in time. Well, of course, we know. We would have all heard about the Chalo Delhi protest. These are disturbing developments for the country, and the country to move forward, the matter must be resolved in a timely manner. The situation is not good, and it is causing division within the community. Farmers are the backbone of any nation, and their interest must be paramount. These situations arise when matters are not resolved in a timely manner. I just hope that these matters are resolved as soon as they can. Now I'm going to show you a video clip of the news that has just come in. Now, as I'd like to put a disclaimer there, is that this is the news we are rebroadcasting as we have got it. We do not want to have an opinion on this side or that side, or this is right or that is right. We are simply reporting the facts as they have come to hand via this video. But all I can say is what's happening is not very good, and it needs to be resolved in a timely manner. It is time to everyone to come together, put our differences aside, come to a mutual agreement, move forward so that the country can move forward. This is affecting so many people. So here's that report.
This tussle between the farmers and the center, it would go long, because center is not ready to roll back its bills, which the farmers will never accept. And farmers of Punjab and Haryana, particularly Punjab, they are quite determined that they are not going to sit until something conclusive happened. Farmers of Punjab, they have been protesting for the last around 6 months, and these protests, they have got intensified for the past 2 months when the ordinances which were brought in the month of June were given the form of the bill in the parliament. So now for the last 2 months, they have been sitting on the roads, they have been sitting on the railway tracks. And in the month of October, say around mid-October, there was a meeting of the farmers with the government, and then they had decided that they will lift rail blockade from 20th of October. They lifted, but then the trains, they were run for only 2 days, and the Indian Railway, they said that still the farmers, they have blocked rail traffic at several places, due to which the Indian Railway, they stopped running the the trains again. And now we can say that for 2 months there were all the trains, they were suspended in Punjab, and in between the government had offered farmers to have talks with them, but both the talks they remained inconclusive. So now currently the farmers of Punjab, they have lifted their dharnas from the railway tracks, barring one organization which is still sitting on one main track, which is coming from Delhi to Amritsar. So only now the single rail blockade is left. Otherwise, the protests, they are still continue, but the rail blockade is only at one place now. Earlier, they were targeting both center as well as the state government. No doubt that the state government has always been in favor of the Punjab farmers. They were taking Punjab farmers side, but still to be more on the side of the Punjab farmers, Punjab government went ahead even passing their own legislations. They passed their own 3 bills, and these 3 bills were only to reject the center's bill, central government's agriculture bill. But the farmers of Punjab, they are preparing for Delhi Chalo, which is starting from November 26th. They are saying if the Punjab government has passed bill, they are happy with that. But and they are saying that these will not help them in long run, in the sense because the Punjab bills can become formal bill only when the President of India will sign these, and this seems to be unlikely in near future. And ultimately what would happen, that the government has to approach the judiciary, and it may take long time. So they know that the Punjab bills only good for political statement, and only good to show the solidarity with them, but they will not help them. As far as number is concerned, they are saying the number would be in lakhs. There are 30 farmer organizations in Punjab, and every farmer organization saying that minimum they are 10 to 15,000 or even 20,000 workers of their own individual organizations will participate. And if by going by that calculation, the number could be or would be around 3 lakhs. But they are saying that it would be somewhere between 1.5 lakh to 3 lakh, and around 25 to 30% would be the women, folk and the children in this protest. Central government had offered to have meetings with the farmers, and they had 2 meetings. In the first meeting, farmers, the representatives of the farmer organizations, they walked out, and they were saying that there was no senior minister, or they wanted to have talks rather with the Union Minister of Agriculture, Narendra Singh Tomar. So they said that they will not talk anyone else, but only with the minister. And in the second meeting, which was attended by Union Minister, Mr. Tomar, there also the Tomar after the meeting, or the farmers after the meeting, they were not satisfied. Tomar after the meeting, he said that there is a huge gap between the demands by the farmers as well as the stand of the government. So he had already indicated his intention that the central government is not going to roll back their bills, 3 bills, which the farmers are demanding. And at the same time, farmers are saying if the government wants to continue with these 3 bills, then the MSP, minimum supports price, should be made a legal entity. Though the MSP has never ever been has any legal status, but earlier there was no such thing. There was no doubt about it that the center would not procure at least wheat and paddy on MSP. But after coming of these bills, the farmers, they are now doubtful that the centre would run away from procuring these two crops, which are the main crops in the Punjab government. 30 to 32 million ton wheat and paddy is produced here, and it is majority of it is for the centre pool only. So after coming of these bills, now there is a doubt in the minds of the farmers, and now they want a legal status for the MSP.
So there we are, up to date on the news. As I said, that is the news as it has come to hand, and we'll keep an eye on the situation and bring to you reports of things as they happen. Well, right now it's time to go to some of the local news here as well. Well, politics all around the world. We have seen what's happening in US at the moment. And right now, let's take a look in our own backyard first. Well, the role that business lobbyists in political election campaigns is raising questions over integrity. This is by the watchers that, right here in Brisbane or in Queensland or in Australia, how much influence do business lobbyists have on the elections? Here's that report.
At this local sports club in Brisbane's suburbs, the Labor Party faithful last month gathered to bask in a history-making election win.
And I promise you that I will roll up my sleeves tomorrow, get back to work and continue to build a better Queensland. Thank you.
The Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, had hundreds of thousands of Queensland voters to thank on the night. But her victory also owed a lot to two of the state's most powerful corporate lobbyists, who helped shape and guide her re-election campaign: Cameron Milner and Evan Moorhead.
Evan has very broad experience and he can see things from all angles because he's lived a lot of lives. So if you're a premier and you're looking to hang on to your gig, you probably want to grab him as quickly as you can.
Advertising strategist Toby Ralph has been involved in more than 50 election campaigns around the world.
People would have looked to him for sage advice, particularly the Premier who trusts him. And people within the Labor Party machine know he's good at what he does and he commands respect, so he would have been deeply influential.
The role of business lobbyists in political election campaigns is raising serious ethical questions for integrity watchers about potential conflicts of interest.
This practice of lobbyists who are then paid to undertake campaigning work for political parties is quite disturbing because of the acute conflicts of interest it gives rise to.
The two lobbyists, Evan Moorhead and Cameron Milner, have deep ties to the Labor Party. Cameron Milner led the Queensland branch of the ALP before becoming a lobbyist, pausing briefly to work as then opposition leader Bill Shorten's chief of staff before returning to lobbying. The company he's director of, Next Level Strategic Services, represents clients including energy companies Shell and Armour Energy and drinks company Lion.
I just don't think you can ask the public to believe that when wearing two hats you're going to be able to hold some kind of firewall between those two roles. It doesn't pass the pub test.
42-year-old Evan Moorhead is the ultimate political insider. He's a union official who became a state politician, then Queensland Labor Party boss, before joining Premier Palaszczuk's private office. Last year he left the Premier's team and almost immediately set up his lobbying outfit, Enacta Strategies. The firm has been hired to represent dozens of clients. One of Enacta Strategies' clients is the train builder Downer. Its Maryborough facility received a campaign visit from the Premier last month. The lobbying firm has held more than a dozen meetings on their behalf, as Downer tries to secure about $1 billion in government work over coming years. But many groups can't afford lobbyists, leaving them on an uneven playing field.
Well, we'd have to be some of the best farming, cropping land on the planet. I'll probably leave the house about 4:30 in the morning, and it takes about an hour and a half to milk the cows. The calf feeding's got to happen as well in the morning.
When he's not on the land, farmer David Vonhoff is part of a Toowoomba community group which opposes the expansion of the nearby New Ackland coal mine.
That's prime agricultural land which has got the potential to grow food for human beings. But my biggest concern is the future for generations into the future, like my grandkids when they get to my age. How are they going to be dealing with the climate?
The mine's operator was the first client of Evan Moorhead's Enacta Strategies. In a single month, the lobbying firm held 6 high-level meetings on behalf of the resources company. That's the same number of meetings the local anti-coal group says it secured in more than 3 years.
There's no way that we can compete on a lobbying basis with those sorts of efforts.
Now, 7:30 can reveal just how much access Anastasia Palaszczuk's government has given Evan Moorhead and his firm as they've lobbied for multi-million and billion-dollar companies. Since taking on their first client, lobbying contact diaries show Enacta Strategies has met with the Premier's staff more than any other lobbyist, and it's met with the staff of her ministers, on average, more than once a week, and that's more than twice as often as any of their rivals. Evan Moorhead told 7:30 there is a clear separation between the company's campaign activities and its government relations work, and he complies with the lobbyists' code of conduct. But others who closely monitor political integrity issues believe when lobbyists are embedded in campaigns, the risk of an appearance of a conflict of interest is just too high.
Those conflicts arise from 2 sources. One comes from the close relationships that developed between the lobbyist campaigner and elected officials, particularly ministers and their staff. The second source is really the possible confidential information the lobbyist campaigner might have in relation to the elected official.
Further north, another mine was given final state approvals on the cusp of the election.
Pembroke is proud to be developing the Olive Downs Coking Coal Project, a world-class project on a global scale.
Its lobbying firm is directed by Cameron Milner, the other big-name lobbyist involved in the Premier's re-election.
It does make it easier to get to the government if you've just helped them get in. You've been in a war together for 6 weeks and you've won it. Does it help change policy for businesses they represent? No, absolutely not.
The Premier didn't answer detailed questions about the ethical issues raised in this story, but during the campaign defended Evan Moorhead's role.
Look, my understanding is that Mr Moorhead is following all the rules. He has to abide by the rules just like everyone else. Everyone has to abide by the rules.
While there's no claim the current rules have been broken, there are now calls for lobbying laws to be tightened. One proposal would see a cooling-off period to stop insiders moving from election campaigns straight into the lucrative world of lobbying.
The real risk here is that policy becomes kind of made for the few rather than the many. It becomes skewed by those who are in the room and able to have those conversations, who have the resources to buy those connections to get in the room in the first place.
Getting in the room in the first place. Well, what a report that what there is. Well, of course, these things over time are revealed and people get to know what else is happening out there. Well, right now, let's go to Victoria. Some good news coming out of there that Victoria goes 27 days with no new COVID-19 cases. Here's that good report.
We've just had COVID patients coming in, just one after the other.
I'm halfway through my shift. I'm tired.
The last time I looked at the clock last night after working an evening shift was about 1:30.
And we just heard there's 700 new cases in the community today.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's really distressing.
Well, that's that news, and right now Sydney Airport is preparing for possible takeoff.
Sydney Airport's ghost town status is set to change now that state borders are opening up. But the once busy international hub still has a way to go, with overseas borders firmly shut. The CEO of Sydney Airport Corporation, Jeff Culbert, says the return of passengers is welcome news. Jeff Culbert, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alicia. Good to be here.
Since Queensland opened its border to New South Wales and Victoria, have you seen a rush back to the airport?
Well, the Queensland border opens officially on the 1st of December, which is early next week. So we've seen a trickle of people coming from Queensland down to New South Wales, knowing they can get back into Queensland without having to do 2 weeks quarantine. But we're expecting the real rush to happen at the start of next week on the 1st of December.
Your interstate passenger numbers are down 93% in October year on year. What pickup are you expecting on the back of these border openings?
We think the border openings are going to be huge. If you look at the stats, pre-COVID, the Sydney to Melbourne route was the second busiest route in the world, which is a stat that actually amazes a lot of people when they hear it. The Sydney-Brisbane route was around the 10th busiest route in the world. And so we're expecting a really material impact on the amount of passengers coming through the airport. If you look at actually trips from Sydney to Queensland, Sydney to Victoria combined, they represent about 70% of our total domestic traffic and about 50% of all traffic through the airport. So those two border openings are going to be huge for the airport, but not only for us, but also for the airline industry, for the tourism and travel industry as a whole. This has been the really good news that we've been looking for, and it's really great that it's happening in the run-up towards Christmas time.
Well, that's some good news happening there. And as we know, coming back to some of the local news here, last night was a farewell function for Mustafa Ali. Well, of course, we know who Mustafa Ali is. He has been putting out the CCN, or the Crescent's Community News, which has been a online newsletter for the Muslim community for the last 14 plus years. So let's take a look at the function that was last night, where there were many people. Well, not many people, because the number of people that could fit in accordance with the COVID-19 rules. So Janet Dean did most of the arrangements, assisted by Farouk Adams, and of course Yasmin Khan was the MC for the function. So the Crescent's newsletter, the online newsletter, will not be published until someone else take that role on. And Mustafa Ali, as he said, that he has been devoted so much of his personal time into keeping that up and running. And of course, when we looked at the stories of how long it took him to get the news out, collecting all the news articles, chasing up all the contributors, cross-checking the facts and putting them in a manner in which that it might not get or offend people. You have to be very careful of the weddings and other things like that. So he did that for a long time. This dinner function was a special farewell to Mustafa and of course honoring him for all his contribution, and that now he can go back and spend some quality time with his family. So Mustafa, we must say that well done, you did quite well, you did the community proud, and everyone who was present in that room there last night, we could see that they're all community leaders in their own right. They're all representing some organizations, and they all spoke very well, and they all spoke very highly of Mustafa Ali. Of course, he was very humbled by the presence of so many people. He wasn't aware who would be coming, and it was mainly put together by Ms. Janet Dean, who is a tireless worker herself, and of course always working very hard to put community functions and events together. And if she takes it on, she puts her heart and mind to it, and makes sure that it gets done. So as Mustafa said yesterday, that it was a love of labor, and that that was his contribution to the community. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to news from around the world, let's take a very quick look at it from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
It definitely is, and don't forget that every week we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra from GlobeNet Realty right here on this channel. Well, right now it's time to go and look at some of the world news. Well, the first news that we have is, of course, we all heard about the passing away of Madonna, and of course, with that, there have been so many people who wanted to witness the funeral and the procession as it went. It became very, very hard to control the crowd, and there had been some clashes there as well. Here's that report. Water cannons were deployed with road police and other motorbikes trying to hold back the crowd, desperate to pay respects to Madonna, who died on Wednesday, November 25th. And for our next news we know that Christmas is coming, and there's so many of our own fellow countrymen who are stranded overseas. So what's going to happen, and how are we going to bring them back home?
Home for the holidays. 150 Australians touched down in Canberra before being taken to hotels to emerge just in time for Christmas. Others aren't so lucky.
Not knowing how or when we may be able to return home is exhausting.
David Jeffries fronted a parliamentary hearing from Canada where he's been since March visiting his sick mum.
Australian bills haven't stopped just because we're not home.
There are almost 37,000 Australians currently registered as wanting to return home from overseas.
This is my daughter Ailish.
Until recently, Carly was one of them, turning to social media in an attempt to get home from London.
Being locked out of your country, you've been abandoned.
Speaking from his own quarantine, the Prime Minister's now conceding a previous promise that everyone would be back by Christmas is no longer possible.
The ability to get people home to Australia depends on the available quarantine capacity.
But there is movement. Melbourne will soon start accepting international arrivals again, while the government wants to bring back 29,000 Australians between now and Christmas. To help facilitate that, it'll soon announce extra repatriation flights, priority given to the more than 8,000 Australians classed as vulnerable.
Donald Trump managed to bring home 100,000 Americans.
I'm sure if we asked the Australian public, they would not want to have the same sort of pandemic experience.
A medical opinion with political edge. Stephanie Dalzell, ABC News, Canberra.
And of course, that promise by the Prime Minister that they'll get every Australian back home by Christmas is not going to be fulfilled, but it will be dependent upon the number of flights that are available as to how many people do make it in time for Christmas. Well, right now to US, yesterday we saw President Donald Trump with the turkey. Well, Joe Biden says it's time to forego some of the family traditions at the Thanksgiving.
It's really hard to care. It's hard to give thanks. It's hard to even think of looking forward. And it's so hard to hope. I understand. I'll be thinking and praying for each and every one of you at this Thanksgiving, at your Thanksgiving table, because We've been there. This year we're asking Americans to forego so many of the traditions that we've long made this holiday, which made it so special. I know how hard it is to forego family traditions, but it's so very important. Our country is in the middle of a dramatic spike in cases. We're now averaging 160,000 new cases a day. And no one will be surprised if we hit 200,000 cases in a single day.
And he's got a job ahead of him, that's for sure. Well, right now, Donald Trump has pardoned Michael Flynn. What else might he do while he's still in office?
Michael Flynn, a three-star general, was President Trump's national security advisor, but he lasted just 23 days in the job, resigning after it emerged he'd lied about a meeting with Russia's ambassador.
Breaking news overnight. The President's National Security Advisor Michael Flynn forced to resign 3 weeks after the White House was told by the Justice Department that he could be vulnerable to Russian blackmail for not telling the truth about his contacts with the Russian ambassador.
The FBI investigated, and Flynn lied to them too, a federal crime to which he eventually pled guilty as part of Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference. He later withdrew his plea, claiming he was set up. Flynn was one of 6 Trump associates convicted or charged as part of the Mueller inquiry. Now that Donald Trump is in the last days of his presidency, more presidential pardons are expected. John Bellinger worked in the George W. Bush administration as a legal advisor for the US Department of State and the National Security Council. John Bellinger, the White House claims that Flynn has been pardoned because he never should have been prosecuted, but didn't he actually plead guilty to lying to the FBI?
He did actually twice pled guilty to, so it's a little bit strange to suggest that he didn't do anything wrong when he pled guilty twice to lying to the FBI about talking to the Russian ambassador back during the transition 4 years ago.
What is the story with presidential pardons? How often are they used or abused?
It was expected, and this is not totally unusual. The U.S. Constitution gives the president broad pardon power to pardon people, but again, only for federal crimes, not crimes against the states. But actually, Donald Trump has issued far fewer pardons than most past presidents by a lot, probably far fewer pardons than any president in 100 years.
And is it usually used to pardon people who are like your allies or your friends?
Well, certainly not, although it certainly sometimes happens. Past presidents who have sometimes issued hundreds or even thousands of pardons. There were several hundred pardons by Bill Clinton and by Barack Obama, but those are usually of people who have formally applied through a formal process for leniency through the Department of Justice, that they've been wrongly convicted, or maybe if they were rightly convicted, they shouldn't be serving a long sentence. So that's usually, it's more an act of grace by the president to, like the king pardoning somebody. It really is not intended for the president to pardon or commute the sentences of his political allies.
John Bellinger, thank you.
Nice.
And there's that news there. Well, right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events taking place in and around Brisbane. So those are the functions and events taking place in and around Brisbane. Remember, a lot of the events are still taking place virtually. Of course, a lot more in-person events have begun as well. Well, last news for today I'm going to leave you with is value capture. So what is value capture? As we know, we have talked about many things, rising things out of thin air, making money from nowhere. So this is like funding for large infrastructure that can come from nowhere. How does this concept work? Here's that report.
Money out of thin air. That's the concept behind value capture. Currently, when land is rezoned, the owners get a windfall gain. Value capture takes some of that to pay for the projects. In Melbourne's outer suburbs, a $150 million stadium is being built without any help from state or federal governments. Daniel Ziffer reports.
In its first year, Western United has been kicking goals. Soon, they'll have a place to call home.
The Field of Dreams, we call it, because it takes a lot of vision to think that one day there'll be a major sporting precinct out here.
I'm here in the fast-growing western suburbs of Melbourne, about 20 minutes by train from the city. In this paddock, in 2 years, there'll be a 15,000-seat football stadium, a commercial area, and it'll be filling up with homes. The interesting thing is how the local government is going to pay for it. There's no state government money, no federal government money. They're making the money to finance the stadium, essentially, out of thin air.
It's called value capture. When governments make infrastructure decisions, like the location of a stadium or subway, nearby landowners get a windfall gain. Different value capture models take a share of that windfall and return it to the public.
In Australia, it's largely the case that the public funds the infrastructure and private landholders who live nearby take the windfalls, and that has to change.
Western United was given this paddock by their local council. They've sold parcels of the land for far more than they could for normal farmland. And that money will pay for the $150 million stadium.
We're providing at no cost the piece of land, which is about 6.5 hectares for the stadium itself. The rest of it, anything that the developer wants to develop on, they pay for. They use the profit to pay for the stadium.
The system is common in Hong Kong and has helped finance the massive new Crossrail tunnel under London.
Value capture closes that loop so that those who have the best location, who have the greatest windfall gains, actually contribute more back to the public coffers than those who live 2, 3, 4 kilometres away. And that's the common sense element of it.
We can't keep going to our state and federal governments and saying, you build it for us. So part of the value capture idea that we've been working on down here is how can we help with the infrastructure build.
Property groups are less enthused about a potential new tax on land.
People who are participating.
So new tax is something that people might not want, but we always have talked about making money from nothing. One of the areas to do that is in real estate. Yes, in real estate. So during many of the seminars which we have done, one of the concepts that's used there is that if you go and buy a house, say for instance, I'm just using some figures here, if you pay $350,000 for a house, which would be very hard to find in today's day and time. So you pay $350,000 for a house, market value of that, and it is valued, and the equity of that is around 400. So its bank value or the value on paper is 400. You paid 350. So you've just made 50,000 equity out of thin air. Nowhere else can you do that except for property. With that report, I need to say goodbye. It's been wonderful having your company. It's always so good to see you. There have been some very heavy going on the news here today, but this is the key things happening around the world. And of course, as I said before, our duty here is to report on what's happening rather than, so we are not people who make judgments or make the opinions on this should happen, that should happen, he's right or she's right. We just report things as they happen. And of course, it is the right thing to do by the government is, to listen to the call of the people, act on it, act in a timely manner so that everyone else can benefit with it. Until tomorrow, have a wonderful day. Most importantly, remain safe and have a very wonderful weekend.